It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and thanks to Worth Magazine for including me. As I said, my name is Alex Bombeck. I'm the CEO of North Highland. We are a global business transformation consulting firm focusing on that intersection between technology and workforce transformation, importantly. Personally, I have been involved in the introduction of emerging technologies and helping businesses leverage them now for over 30 years. Right back in the mid-90s when Al Gore invented the internet, I thought, well, that would be an interesting place to go and play around and see what's going to happen here. And so I had the opportunity to not only experience, the birth of the internet commercially. I know it had been around for a long time before that, but commercially for businesses to use. And then in the early 2000s with IBM, with big data, as they were acquiring businesses like SPSS and Cognos and the likes. And then came APIs and middleware, and then mobility and blockchain, and here we are today with generative AI. And there's a couple things that I would bring to everybody's attention, and the purpose really is to talk about leadership's role in emerging technologies, and particularly what do we need to be thinking of as leaders when we contemplate generative AI. And we've heard some incredible things already this morning. The thing that I would point out to in my experience over the last 30 years with these emerging technologies is that the results have been largely muted in comparison to the expectations that were set around most of them. I'm not saying that we didn't get value and that they weren't terrific and we haven't seen dramatic change. I'm just saying the hype and what we expect to get out of them hasn't really matched what ultimately the value that's been delivered. So if I just spend a minute talking about big data. Today, only 23% of Fortune 500 organizations claim to use enterprise data in their regular ways of working across their organization in any sort of a consistent basis. Only 23%. We're 20 plus years into the big data discussion. Everybody ran to build data lakes and data warehouses, but we still aren't using them effectively. And when we look back at these technologies and we ask ourselves, why is it that we keep underperforming when it comes to how businesses leverage them, there are patterns, consistent patterns that even last night I had a discussion with a couple folks, and we always, we talk about the frozen middle of business, and that's where problems exist, and I don't disagree with that, but I think leaders have to take more accountability to break these patterns if we're going to truly get the value out of the technologies that we're bringing to the marketplace. So my firm spends a lot of time working with these same organizations around generative AI. The first thing that the latest data shows, 80 to 90% of CEOs are saying that they are not getting the results, they have not received the outcomes relative to the investments that they have made in generative AI. I think this is about the 2-year anniversary from the release of ChatGPT. So here we are 2 years in, and we're just barely beginning to scrape the surface in terms of what we can get out of it, what we think the results will be. So I mentioned these patterns that we can look towards. And I think there's 3 things that I would call to everybody's attention that leaders have to focus on if this is going to be different. Because right now, I would argue we have a case of the yets. There are things that haven't happened to us yet, but they will if we don't get rid of this, if we can't flush this from our system. And the first one is the silo, right? How many of you have worked with a generative AI team that gets set up on the side, this little skunkworks team? We love to call them proofs of concept, or even better yet, the COE, right? The center of excellence that's going to figure it out. But where does the center of excellence sit? Inside the business, inside the operations, inside the day-to-day? No. It sits out to the side in a completely artificial environment that doesn't represent anything that most of the employees of an organization do on a day-to-day basis. It's not being run in a normal environment. It's not being run typically on the normal systems. It doesn't have regular employees. But that's where we invest our time and our money. And then we wonder when we try to introduce that into the system, like, why doesn't this work? Well, I don't know, because it was built and designed and run in something that doesn't represent anything the regular business is operating under on a daily basis. That's number one. The second is, what are we expecting to get out of it? Almost every conversation I have with a CEO, CTO, CFO in particular, starts with, what am I going to get? What is the amount of headcount reduction you think we can achieve? What are the savings that we're going to accomplish when we roll this out? All of that is based on what businesses did yesterday. How are we going to optimize what we were doing in the past in order to get better results in the future? Those savings are one time. You know, the financial folks in here, right, you can do the math on that. We reduce headcount, we get a savings, you're done. You haven't actually done anything to help your business grow or accelerate at that point. So we spend all our time focusing on the what and not the how. How do we use technology? How do we use it differently in a business? How do we contemplate new workloads and new applications? How do we help our businesses accelerate and not focus on how many people can we reduce? Technology shouldn't be about having fewer people in our organizations. Technology should be about how we get more from the people we have in our organizations. And if we are going to free people from tasks that have now become menial because of generative AI, how do we redeploy that capacity to do something new, something that we hadn't thought of before or couldn't do because we didn't have the right technology? And then the third thing are the people themselves. Technology does nothing on its own. It doesn't. You need people to use it. You need people in the middle, human in the middle, and in financial services is a lot of what they're talking about. But we have to focus on the people. We have to focus on the training and the upskilling, because where people's heads go, if we don't do that, is I'm going to lose my job, therefore I'm going to fight this thing. But the investment in time isn't spent on the workforce. It's usually spent on the technology itself. And all that amounts to, a lot of technology ends up being about implementation. How do we turn it on? Not adaptation. How can the business evolve to use it better? So one just quick example of something we did recently, and I'm going to admit, it was unintentional. We had a state, one of our wonderful states, the CIO of the state was facing a data audit. And they were coming in. They'd hired us to help them clean up their data house, clean up in aisle 5. We needed to get the data ready for this data audit. We said, that's great. Internally at the organization, we had invested over the past year around generative AI, but the ask of the team wasn't to go and achieve anything. Yes, we can write RFPs faster and produce more documentation, but we really wanted to focus on the how. How do we use it? How do we deploy it? So we said to the CIO, look, you're paying us for the audit. We'll do that. But in the process of doing that, how we want to clean up the data, how we want to get it ready could be really interesting. You know, do you have any issues with that? He said, no, that's fine, go ahead. And in doing that, one of our experts in the transportation space, which had nothing to do with the project whatsoever, started playing with this thing and said, geez, I wonder, now we've got tolling data in there, we've got weather data in there, we've got all this other data in this bespoke LLM that we'd built for them. I wonder if I could actually ask it which bridges we should maintain based on the thousands of pages of manuals that are related to asset management and maintenance that we ingested into this LLM. And it was actually able to give an answer that told us which bridge, what kind of maintenance, which was never anything they'd ever look at, because there's only 2 people that do that. There's no big headcount reduction there. They don't often get it right. As we know, bridges have fallen in this country in the last 12 months, and people have died. But as a result of looking at the how and just contemplating a workload and a question that hadn't been answered before, we were able to get to a much greater outcome than had ever been thought of to start with. So you focus on the how, you get comfortable with uncertainty. Jamie said earlier, strength lies in the messiness. I loved that. That was awesome. So if we can change the way leaders approach this, we have a much greater opportunity to get wildly different outcomes than just reducing headcount in our businesses. And I know many people in this room are doing many of those things. I'm referring to leaders that we work with in Fortune 500 commercial businesses that many of you have influence over. So if I look ahead and I think, well, what can we do differently? Well, let's start with uncertainty. How many leaders are comfortable asking a team to go and set off on a project, they're going to invest in some work and not know what the results are going to be, or not even ask, just say, go play. Be curious, be creative. That's not how we're wired. It's not how we hire people. It's not how we develop people. It certainly isn't how we performance manage people. We write a job description. It has activities we expect people to execute. We set expectations, we measure those expectations, and then we give people bonuses or incentivize them based on their ability to meet those activities effectively. We don't say, we'd like you to apply critical thinking to a problem and come up with a solution that I don't even know what it is. I don't know how to performance manage that. I don't know how to rate that. I don't know how to bonus that. But if we can't figure that out and we can't get comfortable with that uncertainty as a leader, why would we expect our people to do anything differently? They won't. There's this great analogy I often refer to at our firm the freedom within the framework that we try to give our consultants. And don't get me wrong, we are not experts at any of this, right? We're trying, like the rest of the world, to get better, to be the best at getting better, I often say. But we give them freedom within the framework, and there's this study that was done by scientists, and there's a playground. If you can imagine, on two sides, the playground's a square. There's a tree in the middle of the playground. There's a street that runs on two of the sides of the playground. And the scientists said to these families, children, adults and children, go play in that playground, but stay away from the street. You could get killed. Don't go near the street. Everybody went on the playground. They all played around the tree in the middle of the playground. That's where they hung out. Then they put up a little white fence along the edge of the playground, right next to the street, but they put this fence up. They got a different group of folks, and they said, I want you to go play in this playground, but stay away from the street. It's dangerous. You get killed. They spread out across the entire playground, right up to that little white fence. We as leaders have to figure out where we want to put that fence. Where do we want to create the framework to give them that opportunity? And then the last thing is make it everybody's business. Don't make it a skunk works, a proof of concept. Bring AI into the entirety of the business as a leader, because it's going to infect the entire enterprise. AI is about knowledge. It's about the democratization of knowledge. It's about sharing of the knowledge. And we have to ask our entire organization, not just one group, not just one function, how to do that. Because I will tell you, the worst title I ever had in my career, Chief Digital Officer. I am wholly opposed to the entire notion of digital transformation. Why? Because it delegates the understanding of needing to know something to a single individual or a group. And that's just not the way it is. So when somebody asks me, what do I think about digital transformation? I go, I don't know what it is. Everything is digital. Every transformation is digital. And the same should hold true with AI. So let's get rid of this case of the Yets. Let's not let these things happen again. And let's see if we can get leaders to break these patterns so that we can truly get what generative AI has to offer us. Thank you.